Before we dive into tonight's collection of true horror, I need you to do something for me. Hit that subscribe button right now. Seriously, do it. Because what you're about to hear, these 12 disturbing true stories, they're going to stay with you long after this video ends. And trust me, you'll want to come back for more. So subscribe, smash that like button, and let's begin. Sometimes, the most terrifying stories are the ones that actually happened. The ones where real people, just like you and me, found themselves in situations that defy explanation. Tonight, I'm sharing 12 true stories that will make you question everything you thought you knew about safety, privacy, and trust. These aren't creepypastas. These aren't urban legends. These are real events, documented and verified, that happen to real people. So turn down the lights, get comfortable, and prepare yourself. Because once you hear these stories, you won't be able to forget them. Our first story takes us to Portland, Oregon, in the spring of 2018. Marcus Chen had just moved into what he thought was the perfect apartment. It was a one-bedroom unit in a renovated Victorian house, divided into 4 separate apartments. The rent was reasonable, the neighborhood was safe, and his landlord, an older man named Robert Hayes, seemed friendly enough. Marcus worked from home as a software developer, so he spent most of his days in that apartment, sitting at his desk, coding away on his laptop. Everything was fine for the first 2 months. Marcus settled into his routine. He'd wake up, make coffee, work until evening, then relax with some gaming or streaming shows. Normal life, peaceful life. But then, on a Tuesday afternoon in late May, something happened that would change everything. Marcus was working on a particularly complex piece of code when his laptop security software sent him an alert. Someone was trying to access his webcam remotely. He immediately covered the camera with tape, something he should have done from day one, and started investigating. What he found made his blood run cold. There were 3 unauthorized devices connected to his home network. 3 devices he didn't recognize. He ran a network scan and discovered something impossible. The devices were cameras, hidden cameras, and they were actively streaming. Marcus felt his heart pounding in his chest as he grabbed his phone and started searching his apartment. He found the first camera behind the smoke detector in his bedroom. It was tiny, no bigger than a button, with a lens pointed directly at his bed. The second camera was in the bathroom, hidden inside the ventilation grate above the shower. And the third, the one that made him feel physically sick, was in the living room, hidden inside what he thought was just a decorative wall outlet. He immediately called the police, his hands shaking so badly he could barely hold the phone. When the officers arrived, they found 2 more cameras Marcus had missed. One in the kitchen, hidden inside a clock on the wall. Another in the hallway, disguised as a screw head in the ceiling. 5 cameras total, all connected to the same network, all streaming to the same location. The IP address traced back to the basement apartment, Robert Hayes' apartment, the landlord. Pause for a moment and let that sink in. The man Marcus paid rent to every month. The man who had access to his apartment for maintenance checks. The man who smiled and made small talk in the hallway. That man had been watching him for 2 months, watching him sleep, watching him shower, watching every private moment of his life. The police arrested Robert Hayes that evening. When they searched his apartment, They found hard drives containing thousands of hours of footage, not just from Marcus's apartment, from all 4 units, 8 years of footage, hundreds of tenants. Hayes had been doing this for almost a decade in multiple properties he owned across the city. Marcus moved out the next day and never went back. He told me later, during an interview, that he still covers every camera in his home. He still checks every room for hidden devices. He said he'll never feel truly alone again because now he knows. Privacy is an illusion. Someone is always watching. And here's the disturbing part that keeps me up at night. How many other landlords are doing the same thing? How many cameras are hidden in how many homes right now watching people who have no idea? Think about that for a moment. Really think about it. Now, if you're enjoying these stories, and I know you are because you're still here, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Let me know you're listening. And drop a comment telling me which story is hitting you the hardest so far. Your engagement helps me bring you more content like this. And trust me, we're just getting started. Our second story comes from a small town in rural Wisconsin. Sarah Martinez was 28 years old, working as a teacher at the local elementary school. She lived alone in a cottage at the edge of town, surrounded by woods. It was peaceful, quiet, exactly what she wanted after spending years in the chaos of Chicago. Sarah had a routine. Every morning, she'd wake up at 6:30, make breakfast, go for a run on the trail behind her house, then drive to work. Every evening, she'd come home, make dinner, grade papers, and relax with a book before bed. Simple, predictable, safe. But in October of 2019, that safety shattered. It started with small things. Items in her house would be moved, not dramatically, just slightly. A book she left on the coffee table would be on the end table. A mug she placed in the sink would be in the dishwasher. Her running shoes, which she always kept by the back door, would be by the front door instead. At first, she chalked it up to exhaustion. Maybe she was more tired than she realized. Maybe her memory was playing tricks on her. Then the notes started appearing. The first one was on her bathroom mirror, written in what looked like red lipstick she didn't own. It said, "You look beautiful when you sleep." Sarah immediately called the police. They came, took a report, checked the doors and windows. Everything was locked. No signs of forced entry. They suggested maybe it was a prank, maybe one of her students playing a joke, though they couldn't explain how someone got inside. They told her to install better locks and maybe get a security system. She did exactly that. New deadbolts, window locks, a Ring doorbell camera, motion sensor lights in the yard. For a week, nothing happened. Sarah started to relax. Maybe it really had been a one-time thing. Maybe the new security measures scared whoever it was away. Then she checked the footage from her Ring camera. Every night, at exactly 3:17 in the morning, a figure appeared on her porch. A man wearing dark clothes and a hood that obscured his face. He would stand there, perfectly still, facing her door for exactly 5 minutes. Then he would leave. No attempt to break in, no knocking, just standing there, watching. Sarah showed the footage to the police. They increased patrols in her area, but they never caught him. The man seemed to know exactly when the patrol cars would drive by. He only appeared in the gaps between their rounds. The notes continued. They got more specific, more personal. "I like the blue dress you wore on Tuesday. You forgot to buy milk at the grocery store. Your mother called at 7:15 last night. You talked for 32 minutes. Details no one should know. Details about her private life her private conversations, her private moments. Someone wasn't just watching her house. Someone was watching her everywhere. Sarah stopped sleeping. She'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, jumping at every sound. She installed cameras inside her house. She asked her parents to stay with her. Nothing helped. The feeling of being watched never went away. Then, one morning in December, she found something that changed everything. She was getting ready for work, standing in front of her bedroom mirror, when she noticed something odd. A tiny reflection of light, barely visible, coming from the ceiling. She grabbed a chair, stood on it, and examined the smoke detector. It wasn't a smoke detector, it was a camera. A live streaming camera with a SIM card. She called the police again. This time, they tore her house apart, looking for more. They found 7 cameras total, all strategically placed, all connected to cellular data, streaming to an unknown location. And here's what made Sarah's blood run cold. The cameras were professional grade, expensive. Whoever installed them had money and technical knowledge. The police traced the data to a cell phone registered to a man named David Kovach. When they showed Sarah his photo, she recognized him immediately. He was the IT technician at her school. The quiet guy who fixed the teachers' computers. The guy who had access to all their personal information, including home addresses. When police arrested him, they found more than footage of Sarah. David Kovach had been stalking 12 women across 3 counties. Teachers, nurses, retail workers. He had a system. He'd research them online, find out where they lived, then pose as a utility worker or contractor to gain access to their homes and install cameras. He'd been doing it for 5 years. Sarah's testimony helped convict him. He's currently serving 25 years in prison. But Sarah told me she moved 3 times after the trial. She said she still checks every room for cameras. She still feels like she's being watched, even though she knows he's locked up. Because once you've been violated like that, once someone has stolen your sense of safety, you never really get it back. Take a breath. I know these stories are heavy, but this is reality. These things happen, and they're happening more often than you think. Our third story takes place in rural Virginia in the summer of 2020. James and Patricia Holloway had just bought their dream home. It was an old farmhouse built in 1935, sitting on 15 acres of land. The house needed work, lots of work, but they were excited. They had plans to renovate, to make it perfect. The first month was spent cleaning out decades of accumulated junk left by previous owners. Old furniture, boxes of papers, broken appliances. During one of these cleaning sessions, James was in the basement, an unfinished concrete space with stone walls and exposed wooden beams overhead. He was moving some old shelving units when he noticed something strange. There was a draft coming from the wall, cold air flowing from what looked like solid stone. He pressed his hand against the wall and felt it, a hollow space. He grabbed a flashlight and examined the stones more carefully. They weren't mortared together. They were just stacked. Someone had built a false wall. James called Patricia down. Together, they carefully removed the stones, revealing a door. An old wooden door with iron hinges hidden behind the false wall. James's hands were shaking as he pulled the door open. Behind it was a staircase, stone steps leading down into darkness, and at the bottom of those steps, a bunker. The bunker was bigger than their entire basement. The walls were lined with shelves containing hundreds of cans of food, water bottles, medical supplies. There was a generator in the corner, still operational. Cots with sleeping bags, a chemical toilet, and most disturbing of all, the walls were covered in writing. Thousands of words, written in what looked like black marker, covering every available surface. Dates, names, coordinates, diagrams, religious passages, warnings about the end of the world. Some of the writing was orderly, neat handwriting arranged in columns. But as you looked deeper into the bunker, the writing became more chaotic, more frantic. Words overlapping words, some written so hard the marker had torn through the wallpaper underneath. Patricia found a journal on one of the shelves. Inside were entries dating back to 1992. The journal belonged to a man named Ernest Whitmore, who apparently lived in the house before them. The entries started normal enough. Ernest writing about building the bunker as preparation for Y2K. But as the entries continued, they became darker, more paranoid. Ernest wrote about voices in the walls, about shadows that moved when no one was there, about his family leaving him because they didn't understand. By the final entry, dated June 15th, 2003, Ernest was convinced the world had already ended and he was the only person left alive. James and Patricia immediately researched Ernest Whitmore. They found his obituary from 2004. He had died in a psychiatric hospital in Richmond. The cause of death was listed as malnutrition and dehydration. He had refused to eat, claiming the food was poisoned by creatures from the bunker. Here's where it gets worse. James and Patricia decided to seal the bunker. They didn't want it in their home. Too creepy, too disturbing. But before they could, Patricia went down there one more time to clear out the supplies. She was alone in the bunker when she heard it. Scratching, coming from inside the walls. She froze, listening. The scratching continued. Slow, deliberate, like fingernails on stone. She grabbed her phone and turned on the flashlight, shining it along the walls. The sound was coming from the far corner, behind the shelves. Patricia moved the shelves aside and found another door. This one was smaller, almost like a crawlspace entrance. She opened it and shined her light inside. What she saw made her scream and run back up the stairs so fast she twisted her ankle on the steps. Behind that door was another room, and in that room were bones, animal bones, deer, raccoons, possums, all arranged in patterns on the floor, circles within circles, and in the center of the largest circle was a sleeping bag with a pillow. Someone had been sleeping there. Recently, the police were called. They investigated and found evidence that someone had been living in that hidden room. There were fresh water bottles, candy bar wrappers dated from the current year, even a cell phone that was dead but had been used recently. The crawl space had another entrance, one that led to a storm drain that opened in the woods behind the house. Someone had been accessing that bunker from the outside, coming and going, sleeping there, while James and Patricia lived upstairs, completely unaware. They never found out who it was. The police ran the fingerprints but got no matches. The cell phone was a burner with no registered owner. Whoever had been living in that bunker was a ghost. James and Patricia moved out 2 weeks later. They sold the house at a loss and never spoke about it publicly until now. Patricia told me she still has nightmares about that scratching sound, about the thought of someone being beneath her, in the dark, while she slept above them. The new owners of the house sealed both bunkers with concrete. But here's the question that keeps me awake. How many houses have hidden rooms like this? How many secret spaces exist beneath our homes? Spaces we don't know about. Spaces where someone could be living right now while we go about our lives above them. Before we continue, I need you to do something. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. These stories are hard to find, hard to verify, and hard to tell. Your subscription helps me keep bringing you this content. And hit that like button too. Let me know you're still with me, because we're about to get even darker. Our fourth story comes from Seattle, Washington, and involves a nurse named Rachel Kim. Rachel worked the night shift at Providence Regional Medical Center, a large hospital with over 400 beds. She'd been working there for 6 years, primarily in the intensive care unit. She was good at her job, caring, attentive, the kind of nurse patients and families loved. But in the fall of 2017, Rachel started noticing something disturbing. Patients were dying at unusual rates during her shifts, not just elderly patients or those with terminal illnesses. Younger patients, patients who were expected to recover, patients who, medically speaking, shouldn't have died when they did. At first, Rachel thought it was coincidence. The ICU is a place where death happens. It's the nature of the work. But then, she started keeping track. Over a 3-month period, 17 patients died unexpectedly during her shifts, all between the hours of 2 and 4 in the morning, all with similar symptoms before death: sudden drops in blood pressure, respiratory failure, cardiac arrest. Rachel brought her concerns to her supervisor. Her supervisor brushed it off, citing statistics about mortality rates in ICU units. But Rachel couldn't let it go. She started paying closer attention during her shifts, watching, waiting. Then, on a Tuesday night in November, she saw something that confirmed her worst fears. She was at the nurse's station, updating patient charts, when she noticed another nurse, a woman named Jennifer Marks, entering a patient's room, room 312. The patient was a 42-year-old man, recovering from surgery, stable vitals, expected to be discharged within a few days. Rachel watched on the security monitor as Jennifer approached the patient's IV line. Jennifer looked around, checking if anyone was watching, then removed something from her pocket, a syringe. She injected something into the IV port, then quickly left the room. 5 minutes later, the patient's monitor started alarming. Cardiac arrest. The code team rushed in, but they couldn't save him. Time of death, 2:47 in the morning. Rachel immediately went to the hospital administration. She told them what she saw. They reviewed the security footage and confirmed it. Jennifer Marks had injected something into that patient's IV. When they tested the remaining contents of the syringe, found hidden in Jennifer's locker, it contained potassium chloride, a substance that, in large doses, causes the heart to stop. Jennifer Marks was arrested that night. During the investigation, police discovered she had killed 32 patients over a 7-year period, not just at Providence Regional Medical Center, but at 3 other hospitals where she had previously worked. She specifically targeted patients who had no family visiting, patients no one would miss or question. When asked why she did it, Jennifer's answer was chilling. She said she liked the feeling of power, playing God, deciding who lived and who died. She said it made her feel important, needed. She described the rush she got from watching families grieve, from being the one to comfort them, knowing she was the one who caused their pain. Jennifer Marks is currently serving life in prison without possibility of parole. But here's what haunts Rachel. Those 32 deaths were the ones they could prove. Jennifer worked in healthcare for 17 years. How many other patients died by her hand? How many families mourned loved ones, never knowing they were murdered? Rachel quit nursing after the trial. She told me she couldn't go back, couldn't trust her colleagues, couldn't stop wondering if there were others like Jennifer, working in hospitals right now, killing patients and getting away with it. And statistically, there are. Healthcare serial killers are more common than most people realize. They're called angels of death in criminology, and they're incredibly difficult to catch because death in hospitals is expected, normal. Unless someone is paying very close attention, like Rachel was. These killers can operate for years, even decades, without detection. So the next time you or a loved one is in a hospital, pay attention. Watch the staff. Ask questions. Because sometimes the person supposed to save your life is the one trying to take it. Let that sit with you for a moment. Our fifth story takes us to Boston, Massachusetts, and involves a college student named Tyler Morrison. Tyler was a junior at Boston University, majoring in psychology. He lived in a 2-bedroom apartment near campus with his roommate, a guy named Daniel Fletcher. They weren't close friends, just random roommates assigned by the university's housing system, but they got along fine. Daniel was quiet, reserved. He spent most of his time in his room, studying, or on his computer. Tyler barely saw him. Maybe they'd exchange a few words in the kitchen while making food, but that was it. Daniel had no friends that Tyler knew of, never brought anyone to the apartment, never went out to parties, just school and home, school and home. In March of 2016, Tyler needed to use Daniel's laptop for a class presentation. His own laptop had crashed, and the presentation was due in an hour. Daniel wasn't home, but Tyler knew where he kept his laptop, in his room, on his desk. Tyler knocked first, just to be safe, then opened the door. The smell hit him immediately. Stale air, unwashed clothes, rotting food. Daniel's room was a disaster. Clothes piled on the floor, dishes crusted with old food stacked on every surface. But it was what Tyler saw on the walls that made him forget about the laptop. Photos, hundreds of photos, covering every wall, overlapping each other, some taped, some pinned. Photos of students from their university, girls mostly, walking to class, sitting in the library, eating in the cafeteria. Some of the photos were taken from a distance. Others were close-ups, taken without the subjects knowing. Tyler's heart was pounding as he looked around the room. On Daniel's desk, next to the laptop, was a notebook. Tyler opened it. Inside were pages and pages of handwritten notes about the girls in the photos, their names, their class schedules, where they lived, their daily routines. Some entries included disturbing fantasies about what Daniel wanted to do to them. Tyler immediately took photos of everything with his phone and called the police. When the officers arrived and searched the room, they found more. In Daniel's closet, hidden in a duffel bag, were items that clearly belonged to the girls in the photos. A hairbrush, a scarf, someone's ID card, panties, a notebook with a girl's name written on the cover. Daniel had been stalking at least 20 different girls. He'd been breaking into their dorm rooms while they were in class and stealing personal items. The police found a file on his computer detailing how to pick locks and bypass security systems. He'd been planning something bigger, something violent. When police arrested Daniel at his afternoon class, he didn't resist. He didn't show any emotion at all, just quiet acceptance. During questioning, he admitted to everything. Said he'd been watching these girls for over a year. Said he was trying to work up the courage to make contact with them. When asked what he meant by that, he refused to elaborate. But investigators found diagrams in his notebook. Diagrams of the university's underground tunnel system. Diagrams showing how to access dorm rooms from below. Plans. Daniel Fletcher was charged with stalking, breaking, and entering, and theft. He pled guilty and was sentenced to 8 years in prison with mandatory psychiatric evaluation. The university implemented new security measures in all dorms and expelled Daniel permanently. Tyler moved out of that apartment the next day. He told me years later that he still feels guilty. He had lived with Daniel for 8 months and never suspected anything. Never thought to check on him. Never questioned why Daniel was so isolated, so secretive. Tyler said he wonders how close Daniel was to acting on his plans. If Tyler hadn't needed that laptop, if he hadn't gone into Daniel's room that day, would one of those girls be dead now? The scary part is, we'll never know. Daniel won't say. He sits in his cell, silent, refusing to talk about his intentions. The psychiatrists who evaluated him said he shows signs of extreme antisocial behavior and violent ideation. They recommended he never be released early. But here's the thing that keeps me up at night. Daniel lived with Tyler for 8 months. 8 months, right next door, plotting, planning. And Tyler had no idea how many other people are living with roommates, neighbors, family members who are hiding dark secrets. How many predators are living normal lives, blending in, while planning something terrible? Your roommate, your neighbor, the quiet guy at work. How well do you really know them? Think about it. We're past the halfway point now, and if you're still listening, you're one of the real ones. Do me a favor, drop a comment right now. Tell me which story has disturbed you the most so far. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Hit that button. You know you want more of this. Don't lie to yourself. Our 6th story is about a family in Austin, Texas, the Henderson family. Michael and Lisa Henderson, along with their 2 children, Emma and Noah, aged 12 and 9. They lived in a suburban neighborhood, the kind where everyone knows everyone, where kids ride bikes in the street and neighbors have barbecues on weekends. In August of 2015, the Henderson family started receiving phone calls. At first, they were just hang-ups. The phone would ring, someone would answer, and there'd be silence on the other end before the line went dead. Annoying, but not terrifying. Michael assumed it was telemarketers or wrong numbers. But then the calls changed. The caller started speaking. A voice, distorted and mechanical, like it was being run through a voice modulator. The voice would say things like, "I see you," or "I'm watching the children," then hang up. Michael called the phone company. They traced the calls, but couldn't give him any useful information due to privacy laws. They suggested he contact the police. The police took a report, but said there wasn't much they could do. Harassing phone calls were common. They recommended the Henderson family change their phone number. So they did. New number, unlisted, gave it only to close friends and family. The calls stopped for 2 weeks. Michael and Lisa thought it was over. Then, one evening, while the family was having dinner, Lisa's cell phone rang. Unknown number. She answered, expecting maybe a friend calling from a new number. the same distorted voice. But this time, it said something that made Lisa drop the phone. "Emma looks pretty in her blue dress." Emma was wearing a blue dress. Right then, at the dinner table. Michael grabbed the phone, but the line was dead. He immediately called 911. The police came and searched the property, checked all the windows, looked for anyone hiding in the yard. Nothing. No one there. The officer suggested maybe it was a lucky guess, but Lisa knew better. The timing was too specific. Over the next month, the calls continued, always to different numbers, always with specific details about the family's activities. Noah played soccer today. He scored 2 goals. Michael wore the red tie to work. Lisa went to the grocery store and bought chicken and broccoli. The Henderson family was being watched, constantly. But by who and how? Michael installed security cameras around the entire property. He hired a private investigator. He checked his cars for GPS trackers. He searched the house for hidden cameras. Nothing. No evidence of surveillance. No signs of anyone watching them. But the calls kept coming. Then, in October, Lisa received a call that was different. The voice said, "Call your own number. See who answers." Lisa was confused, but decided to try it. She hung up and called their home landline from her cell phone. The phone in their kitchen started ringing. But before she could walk over to answer it, someone picked up. Someone answered their home phone. And the voice that came through was the distorted voice from the calls, the exact same voice, speaking from inside their house. Lisa screamed and grabbed the kids. They ran outside and called 911 from the neighbor's house. Police arrived within minutes. They searched the entire house, top to bottom. Attic, basement, every closet, every room. No one was there. The house was empty. But the call had come from inside their landline. Someone had answered their phone from inside their house. The police couldn't explain it. The tech investigator they brought in found something disturbing. Someone had hacked their home phone system remotely. Using a vulnerability in their router, someone had gained access to their entire network. Not just the phones, everything. Their computers, their security cameras, their smart TV. Every device in their home had been compromised. The hacker could see through their security cameras, read their emails, listen to their conversations, even answer their phones remotely. The Henderson family had installed security to protect themselves, and in doing so, they'd given someone complete access to their lives. The FBI cybercrimes unit got involved, but they never caught the person responsible. The hacker covered their tracks too well, used proxy servers bouncing through multiple countries. The trail went cold in Eastern Europe somewhere. The Henderson family moved. New city, new state, new everything. They don't use smart devices anymore. No smart TVs, no security cameras, no voice assistants. Michael told me they live as analog as possible in this digital age, because they learned the hard way that technology designed to protect you can be turned into a weapon against you. And here's the truly disturbing part. The vulnerability the hacker exploited is still present in millions of routers worldwide. Most people never update their firmware. Most people never change default passwords. Most people have no idea their devices can be accessed remotely. Right now, as you listen to this, someone could be watching you through your own security system. Someone could be listening through your smart speaker. You'd never know. So ask yourself, how secure is your digital life? Really? Our seventh story takes place in rural Montana, a place where the nearest neighbor is 3 miles away and the nearest town is a 30-minute drive. In the summer of 2019, a man named Robert Sullivan bought an old farmhouse at an estate sale. The previous owner, an elderly woman named Margaret Doyle, had died with no living relatives. The property had been sitting empty for 6 months before Robert purchased it. Robert was a writer working on his first novel, and he wanted isolation, wanted peace and quiet. This farmhouse was perfect. 2 stories, wrap-around porch, acres of land surrounding it, and it was cheap, really cheap. Robert didn't question why. He moved in on a Monday in June, spent the first week cleaning, painting, making the place livable. It wasn't until he started renovating the upstairs bedroom that he found something strange. He was tearing down old wallpaper when he discovered words written on the wall underneath. Words written directly on the plaster, in pencil, barely visible. "Help me. I can't get out." Robert stared at those words for a long time. He assumed maybe they were from years ago. Maybe some kid wrote them as a joke. He kept removing the wallpaper. More words appeared, all over the walls. Some were just single words. Cold, hungry, please. Others were longer sentences. "Mother won't let me out. It's been 3 days. I can hear them eating downstairs." Robert felt sick. He pulled off all the wallpaper in that room and found hundreds of messages. They covered every wall, written in the same handwriting, growing more desperate and incoherent as they progressed. The final message, written near the door, said, "I don't want to die here." Robert called the local sheriff. Sheriff Tom Bradshaw came out, looked at the walls, and explained that Margaret Doyle had a daughter who died in that house back in 1984. The daughter, Carolyn, was 16 years old. Official cause of death was listed as pneumonia, but there had always been rumors in town that Margaret was abusive, that she locked Carolyn in that room for days at a time as punishment. Sheriff Bradshaw said there was an investigation at the time, but nothing was ever proven. Margaret claimed Carolyn got sick naturally. The doctors couldn't prove otherwise. The case was closed. Margaret lived alone in that house for another 35 years until her death. Robert wanted to leave, wanted to sell the house and forget about it. But he couldn't. He was haunted by those messages. He spent weeks researching Carolyn Doyle, found her death certificate, found her birth certificate, found a single photo of her in the town library's archive, a school photo from 1983. She was smiling in the photo, but her eyes looked sad, haunted. Robert decided to honor Carolyn's memory. He left the messages on the walls and covered them with glass panels, preserving them. He turned that room into a memorial for her. And that's when things started happening. At night, Robert would hear footsteps upstairs, in that room. Slow, deliberate footsteps. He'd go up to check, and the footsteps would stop the moment he'd touch the door handle. Sometimes he'd hear crying, soft, female crying coming from inside the room. But when he opened the door, nothing, just an empty room. Robert started sleeping with his lights on, started leaving the house during the day, driving into town just to be around other people. He told Sheriff Bradshaw about the sounds. The sheriff said old houses make noise, settling, pipes, wind, natural explanations. But then Robert started finding things. Small things moved around. His coffee mug would be in different rooms than where he left it. pages of his manuscript would be rearranged, and sometimes, when he woke up in the morning, there'd be a message written in the condensation on his bathroom mirror. Just one word: stay. Robert stayed. He finished his novel. It's a book about Carolyn's life, based on research and those messages she left behind. It's called The Girl in the Walls, and it was published in 2021. Robert still lives in that house. He told me he's made peace with whatever is there. He said he doesn't think Carolyn is trying to scare him. He thinks she's just grateful someone finally knows her story. Someone finally listened. But here's what gets me. How many houses have similar secrets? How many walls hide messages from people who suffered? How many children were abused, locked away, forgotten? Their stories lost because no one cared enough to look beneath the surface. Carolyn Doyle died alone in that room. Her mother was never held accountable. And if Robert hadn't bought that house, if he hadn't torn down that wallpaper, Carolyn's story would have stayed hidden forever. How many stories are still hidden? Right now, in houses all over the world, stories waiting to be discovered, voices waiting to be heard. Before we move to our 8th story, I need you to do something for me. If this content is affecting you, if these stories are getting under your skin, let me know. Hit that like button. Leave a comment. Tell me what you're thinking. And if you're not subscribed yet, seriously, subscribe. You've made it this far. You're invested. Don't pretend you're not. Our 8th story comes from Chicago, Illinois, and involves a young mother named Amanda Price. Amanda had a 6-month-old daughter named Sophie. Like many new parents, Amanda was paranoid about her baby's safety. She had a baby monitor in Sophie's room, one of those fancy ones with a camera that streams to your phone. She could check on Sophie anytime, anywhere. In February of 2020, Amanda started noticing something odd. Sometimes, when she checked the monitor late at night, the camera would be pointed in a different direction than where she'd left it. The camera was supposed to be fixed, aimed at Sophie's crib, but occasionally it would be angled toward the door or toward the window, like someone had moved it. Amanda mentioned it to her husband, Derek. He said maybe she was bumping it when she adjusted Sophie's blankets. Maybe the mounting wasn't secure. He tightened the screws and made sure it was firmly in place. Problem solved, or so they thought. A few nights later, Amanda woke up at 2 in the morning to use the bathroom. Out of habit, she checked the monitor on her phone. The camera feed showed Sophie's room, but something was wrong. There was someone standing in the doorway. A figure. A man. Just standing there, facing the crib, perfectly still. Amanda screamed and shook Derek awake. They both ran to Sophie's room. Amanda was holding her phone, watching the monitor feed as they ran. On the screen, the figure turned toward the door, toward them, as if it knew they were coming. But when they burst into Sophie's room, no one was there. Sophie was sleeping peacefully. The room was empty. Derek searched the entire house, checked every room, every closet, every window. All the doors were locked, no signs of forced entry, no one there. He told Amanda she must have seen a shadow, a trick of the light, something on the camera lens. But Amanda knew what she saw. That was a person, a man, standing in her daughter's room. The next day, Amanda called the company that made the monitor. The tech support person asked for her account details and went quiet for a moment. Then they told her something that made her blood run cold. Someone else was logged into her account. Someone had access to her camera feed. The company investigated and found that Amanda's account had been hacked 3 weeks earlier. Someone had her login credentials and had been watching the camera feed every night. And more than that, whoever hacked the account had also gained the ability to control the camera remotely, to move it, to speak through its speaker. Amanda immediately unplugged the monitor and called the police. The cybercrimes unit traced the hacker's IP address to an apartment building 8 blocks away from Amanda's house. When police raided the apartment, they found the man responsible. His name was Kevin Ortega, a 29-year-old IT worker. Kevin's apartment was filled with computer equipment, multiple monitors showing live feeds from dozens of baby monitors and security cameras. He had hacked into over 100 homes. He'd been watching families for months. And here's the worst part. Kevin had files on his computer. Detailed files about each family, their schedules, when parents were home and when they weren't, which rooms children slept in. Kevin was planning home invasions. He was watching these families, learning their routines, planning when to break in. The police found burglary tools in his closet: duct tape, rope, a knife. He hadn't acted yet, but he was preparing. Kevin Ortega is currently serving 15 years for computer fraud, hacking, and stalking, but the investigation revealed how he did it. He had access to a database leak from the baby monitor company. Thousands of usernames and passwords were compromised. Most people never changed their passwords after the breach, so Kevin just logged in and had complete access. Amanda moved to a new house after the trial. She doesn't use any smart devices now. No cameras, no monitors. She keeps Sophie's door open at night and sleeps in the same room. She told me she'll never trust technology again because the device she bought to keep her daughter safe almost made her daughter a target. And here's the terrifying reality. That database breach affected 3 million accounts, 3 million baby monitors potentially compromised. The company sent password reset emails, but most people ignored them. Most people still have the same passwords, which means right now, as you listen to this, someone could be watching through a hacked baby monitor, watching a child sleep, planning. So if you have a smart device in your home, a camera, a monitor, anything connected to the internet, change your password right now. Enable two-factor authentication. Check who has access to your account, because the person watching might not be who you think it is. Our 9th story takes place in Denver, Colorado, and involves a man named Stephen Marsh. Stephen worked as an accountant for a mid-sized marketing firm called Bright Horizons. He'd been with the company for 8 years, working his way up from junior accountant to financial controller. It was a good job, stable, boring, exactly what Stephen wanted. In May of 2018, Stephen was doing routine end-of-year financial audits when he noticed a discrepancy. Money was being transferred out of one of the company's accounts to an offshore account. Small amounts, a few $100s here and there. Easy to miss if you weren't looking carefully. But over the course of a year, it added up to nearly $50,000. Stephen assumed it was an error. Maybe someone had set up the wrong account for vendor payments. He brought it to his boss, the CFO, a woman named Linda Cartwright. Linda looked at the records, thanked Stephen for catching it, and said she'd handle it. Stephen thought nothing more of it and went back to work. 2 weeks later, Stephen was working late in the office, finishing up quarterly reports. It was past midnight. Everyone else had gone home. The building was empty except for security downstairs. Stephen was in the finance department on the 4th floor, alone, when he decided to take a break and grab some coffee from the break room. As he walked past Linda's office, he noticed the door was open and the lights were on. Odd, since Linda always locked her office when she left. Stephen peeked inside and saw Linda's computer was still running, the screen unlocked. He walked in, intending to just shut it down for her, when he saw what was on the screen: an email chain between Linda and someone named Marcus Chen. The emails discussed the offshore account Stephen had discovered, but they weren't trying to fix the error. They were discussing how to hide it better, how to move more money without being detected. The emails went back years. Linda had been embezzling from the company for over 5 years, millions of dollars, and there was more. The emails discussed other things: falsified records, bribery, kickback schemes with vendors. Bright Horizons was being drained from the inside, and Linda was orchestrating it all. Stephen stood there, frozen, reading email after email. His hands were shaking. He should have left immediately, should have called the police. But he needed proof. He pulled out his phone and started taking photos of the screen. Evidence. That's when he heard the elevator ding. Someone was coming up. Stephen panicked. He quickly sent himself copies of the emails from Linda's computer, then shut the screen off and ran back to his desk. He pretended to be working when Linda stepped off the elevator, looking surprised to see him. She asked what he was doing there so late. Stephen stammered something about deadlines and quarterly reports. Linda stared at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she smiled and said to not work too hard, that he should go home and get some rest. Stephen agreed and left quickly, his heart pounding the entire way to his car. He didn't go home. He drove straight to the police station and showed them everything: the emails, the transfers, the evidence of embezzlement and fraud. The police contacted the FBI, and a full investigation was launched. Within a week, Linda Cartwright and Marcus Chen, who turned out to be a corrupt vendor working with Linda, were arrested. The investigation uncovered that they had stolen over $4 million from Bright Horizons over 6 years. But here's where Stephen's story takes a dark turn. After Linda's arrest, Stephen started receiving threats, anonymous emails, threatening letters. Someone slashed his tires. Someone broke his apartment window in the middle of the night. The police said Linda and Marcus were the obvious suspects, but they were both in jail, awaiting trial. It wasn't them. The FBI investigated and discovered that Linda and Marcus were part of a larger network. There were other people involved, people who hadn't been caught yet. And these people blamed Stephen for exposing the operation. They wanted revenge. Stephen was placed in witness protection during the trial. He testified against Linda and Marcus. Both were convicted and sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. But even after the trial, the threats continued. Stephen had to move 3 times, change his name, leave his entire life behind. He can never go back to Denver, can never see his family without elaborate security arrangements. Stephen told me during our interview that he regrets discovering those emails. He wishes he'd never looked at Linda's computer that night. He said losing everything, his job, his home, his identity, wasn't worth it. He did the right thing, exposed corruption and crime, and it destroyed his life. And that's the reality of being a whistleblower. You do the right thing, and you pay for it. The criminals might go to jail, but you lose everything: your safety, your privacy, your peace of mind. Stephen now works under a fake name in a small town I can't disclose for his safety. He looks over his shoulder everywhere he goes. He doesn't trust anyone, and he lives with the knowledge that somewhere out there, people still want him dead. So ask yourself, if you discovered something terrible at your workplace, would you report it? Would you risk your entire life to do the right thing? Or would you look the other way and pretend you never saw anything? It's an impossible choice, but it's a choice Stephen had to make, and he's still paying the price. We're in the final stretch now, 3 more stories to go. If you're still with me, you're a trooper. But before we continue, do me one last favor. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Smash that like button and drop a comment telling me which story disturbed you the most. I read every single comment, and your engagement really does help. Plus, it lets me know what kind of content you want more of. Our 10th story involves a rideshare driver in Los Angeles named Marcus Torres. Marcus drove for both Uber and Lyft, working night shifts to supplement his income while going to film school during the day. He'd been driving for about 2 years and had given thousands of rides. He'd seen everything: drunk passengers, rude passengers, people hooking up in his back seat. Nothing surprised him anymore until October of 2019. Marcus picked up a fare at 11:30 p.m. The pickup location was a residential street in Koreatown. The passenger's name on the app was Jennifer. 5-star rating. Over 200 previous rides. Normal profile. Marcus pulled up to the address and waited. A woman got in the back seat. She was in her 30s, wearing jeans and a sweater, carrying a purse. She looked completely normal. She confirmed she was Jennifer and gave him the destination, an address in Hollywood, about a 20-minute drive. Marcus started driving. They made small talk, traffic, weather, the usual. Jennifer seemed nice, friendly. About halfway through the trip, as Marcus was stopped at a red light, Jennifer leaned forward and said something that made his blood run cold. "I died in a car accident at this intersection 3 years ago." Marcus looked at her in the rearview mirror. She was smiling. Not a friendly smile. Something else. Something wrong. He laughed nervously and said that was a weird joke. Jennifer didn't laugh. She just kept staring at him in the mirror. "Check the app," she said. "Check my profile." Marcus glanced at his phone. Jennifer's profile was still up. He tapped on it to see her details. The account had been created in 2016. The last ride she took, according to the app, was in October of 2016. 3 years ago. The account had been inactive since then, until tonight. But that was impossible. Jennifer was sitting in his back seat right now. Marcus looked in the mirror again. Jennifer was still there, still smiling. "You seem confused," she said. "Let me help you understand." She pulled out her phone and showed Marcus something. A news article from October 23rd, 2016. The headline read, "Woman dies in Hollywood intersection crash." And there was a photo. The woman in the photo was Jennifer. Same face, same person. Marcus slammed on the brakes. The car behind him honked. He turned around to look at the back seat. Jennifer was gone. The back door was still closed. The seat was empty. But Marcus could still smell her perfume. Could still see the indentation on the seat where she'd been sitting. He frantically checked the app. The ride was still active, still showing Jennifer as his passenger, still showing the destination. But his back seat was empty. Marcus canceled the ride and drove straight home, his hands shaking so badly he could barely hold the steering wheel. He didn't drive for Uber or Lyft for a week after that. When he finally went back to work, he researched the accident, found the news articles, found Jennifer's obituary. She had died at that exact intersection, hit by a drunk driver while she was in a rideshare vehicle on her way home from work. Marcus called Uber support and reported what happened. They told him the account had been deactivated years ago after the user's death. There was no way anyone could have requested a ride from that account. It was impossible. But Marcus has the proof. Screenshots of the ride request, the passenger profile, the route, all saved on his phone. And other drivers have reported similar experiences, picking up passengers who don't exist, passengers who vanish mid-ride, passengers whose accounts have been dead for years. Uber and Lyft don't acknowledge these reports publicly. They claim it's app glitches, technical errors. But Marcus knows what he experienced. He picked up a dead woman, had a conversation with her, and she wanted him to know she was dead. Marcus quit rideshare driving for good after that night. He told me he couldn't handle the uncertainty, couldn't handle not knowing if the person getting in his car was real or not. He said the city is full of ghosts, and they still need rides. I don't know if I believe in ghosts, but I believe Marcus believes. And that's enough to keep me from ever driving for a rideshare company. Our 11th story takes place in Portland, Oregon, and involves a woman named Rebecca Walsh. Rebecca lived alone in a small apartment in the Pearl District. She worked from home as a graphic designer, so she spent most of her time in her apartment. She liked her space. It was cozy, quiet, safe. In January of 2020, Rebecca started receiving packages. At first, she thought it was a mistake. The packages were addressed to someone named Sarah Mitchell at Rebecca's address. Rebecca had never heard of Sarah Mitchell. She assumed maybe it was the previous tenant, so she returned the packages to the post office, marking them as "Return to Sender." But the packages kept coming. Multiple packages every week, all addressed to Sarah Mitchell, all delivered to Rebecca's apartment. Rebecca contacted the post office and told them to stop delivering packages to Sarah Mitchell. The post office said they couldn't do that. The packages were properly addressed. If Rebecca wasn't Sarah Mitchell, she should just refuse them. So Rebecca started refusing the packages. The delivery drivers would take them back, but the next day, more packages would arrive. It became an endless cycle. Rebecca tried contacting the companies sending the packages. Amazon, Target, various clothing retailers, they all said the same thing. The orders were placed by someone using the name Sarah Mitchell with Rebecca's address, paid for with valid credit cards. They couldn't cancel orders already placed. Rebecca became obsessed with figuring out who Sarah Mitchell was. She searched online, found nothing. No social media profiles, no public records, no obituaries. It was like Sarah Mitchell didn't exist, had never existed. Then Rebecca had an idea. She let one of the packages be delivered instead of refusing it. She opened it carefully. Inside was a book, The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. There was a receipt, but no return address. No information about who placed the order. Over the next month, Rebecca started accepting and opening the packages. Each one contained something different. Books, clothes in sizes that would fit Rebecca, kitchen items, decorations, things Rebecca might actually want, things that matched her taste. And that's when she started getting scared. Someone was sending her things she would like. Someone knew her style, knew what she'd want. But who? And why use a fake name? Rebecca installed a security camera outside her door, hoping to catch whoever was delivering the packages. But the packages were delivered by normal delivery drivers. UPS, FedEx, Amazon. No one suspicious. Then, in March, Rebecca received a package that changed everything. It was a photo album. Inside were photos of Rebecca, hundreds of photos. Photos taken over months. Rebecca walking to the coffee shop. Rebecca in the grocery store. Rebecca sitting in her apartment, visible through her window. Someone had been following her, photographing her, stalking her. And at the very back of the album was a handwritten note. "You're welcome for the gifts, Sarah." Or should I say, Rebecca, I know who you really are. I've always known. Rebecca immediately called the police. They investigated, but couldn't find who was sending the packages. All the credit cards used were stolen. All the IP addresses used to place orders were from public Wi-Fi locations. The person behind this covered their tracks perfectly. The police suggested Rebecca move, get a restraining order. But against who? Sarah Mitchell didn't exist. The stalker was a ghost. Rebecca did move. New apartment, new city, new everything. She thought she'd escaped. But 3 weeks after moving into her new place in Seattle, a package arrived, addressed to Sarah Mitchell, at her new address, an address she'd told no one about, an address that wasn't even in any databases yet. Inside the package was another note. "You can't run from yourself, Sarah. I'll always find you." Rebecca's case is still open. The police still haven't identified the stalker. Rebecca has moved 4 times now. Each time, the packages find her. She's living under a fake name, working off the grid, trying to stay invisible. But the packages always arrive. And that's what terrifies me most about this story. The stalker's commitment, the resources, the ability to find Rebecca no matter where she goes. This isn't just some obsessed ex or random creep. This is someone with serious capabilities, someone who won't stop. Rebecca told me she doesn't sleep anymore. She's constantly looking over her shoulder, constantly waiting for the next package, the next photo, the next message. She said her life isn't her own anymore. It belongs to whoever is doing this to her, and she doesn't know how to stop it. So think about this. If someone decided to make you their project, their obsession, could you stop them? Could you disappear completely? In this digital age, where everything is tracked and traced, is it even possible to truly hide? Rebecca doesn't think so, and I'm starting to believe she's right. Our final story, number 12, takes us back to where we started. Hidden cameras, hidden spaces, hidden lives. This story takes place in Brooklyn, New York, and it involves a man named James Patterson. Not the famous author, just a regular guy with the same name. James rented a studio apartment in a brownstone in Park Slope. It was a nice place, recently renovated, exposed brick walls, hardwood floors, affordable rent, which is rare for that neighborhood. James was thrilled. He moved in September of 2021. For the first few months, everything was normal. James worked his job as a paralegal during the day and enjoyed his evenings exploring Brooklyn. But in December, he started noticing strange things. Sounds in the walls at night, scratching, movement. James assumed it was rats or mice and called his landlord, Mr. Chen, to report the problem. Mr. Chen said he'd send an exterminator. The exterminator came, looked around, and said he couldn't find any evidence of rodents. No droppings, no gnaw marks, nothing. He said maybe it was pipes or the building settling. Old buildings make noise. But the sounds continued, and they weren't random. James started noticing patterns. The sounds happened at specific times, always between midnight and 3 a.m., always in the wall behind his bed, scratching, tapping, like someone was trying to get his attention. One night, James pressed his ear against the wall and listened carefully. The tapping stopped. Then, from inside the wall, he heard something that made him jump back. A voice, whispered, barely audible, but definitely a voice. "Help me." James called the police immediately. Officers came and inspected the apartment. They knocked on the walls, listening for hollow spaces. Behind James's bed, they found something. The wall sounded wrong, hollow. They got permission from the landlord to break through. Behind the wall was a space, a narrow crawl space, maybe 2 feet wide, running between the apartments. And inside that crawl space, they found evidence someone had been living there. A sleeping bag, empty food wrappers, water bottles, and most disturbingly, a hole drilled through the wall into James's apartment. A hole with a view directly to his bed. The police expanded their search. They discovered the crawl space connected to multiple apartments in the building. 6 apartments total. And each apartment had similar holes drilled through. Peepholes. Whoever was living in those walls had been watching 6 different tenants. They never found the person. Whoever was in the walls escaped before the police arrived, but they found notebooks, pages and pages of observations about the tenants, their schedules, their habits, their private moments. One notebook was entirely about James. What time he woke up, what he ate for breakfast, what he watched on TV, everything. The investigation revealed that Mr. Chen, the landlord, had renovated the building himself. He'd created those crawl spaces intentionally during the renovation, and the evidence suggested Mr. Chen himself had been the one living in the walls, watching his tenants. But when police tried to arrest him, Mr. Chen was gone, vanished. His house was empty. His bank accounts were closed. His phone was disconnected. He disappeared completely and hasn't been found. There's an active warrant for his arrest, but he's been missing for over 2 years now. James moved out immediately. So did all the other tenants. The building was condemned and later demolished. But James told me he still can't sleep without checking his walls. He knocks on them every night before bed, listening, making sure they're solid, making sure no one is living inside them. And that's what keeps me up at night. How many buildings have spaces like this? How many landlords, contractors, architects have created secret passages and hidden rooms? How many people are living in walls, in attics, in basements, watching tenants who have no idea? We trust that the buildings we live in are safe, that the walls are just walls. But sometimes they're not. Sometimes there's someone on the other side, watching, waiting. So tonight, when you go to bed, listen carefully. Knock on your walls. Check your ceiling, because you might not be as alone as you think. We've reached the end of our 12 disturbing true stories. Stories that I hope will stay with you. Stories that remind us that reality is often more terrifying than any fiction. These things happened to real people, in real places, and they could happen again. They could happen to you. If you made it this far, thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Now I need you to do one final thing for me. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Hit that like button. And most importantly, leave a comment. Tell me which story affected you most. Tell me if you've experienced anything similar. Tell me what you want to hear next. Because there are more stories out there, so many more. And I'll keep finding them, keep telling them, as long as you keep listening. Until next time, stay safe, lock your doors, check your walls, and remember, sometimes the scariest monsters are the ones that look just like us. Good night.